Well, I want to introduce everybody. We have here one of the greatest 212 bodybuilders, Arnold Classic champion, obviously a top Olympian, Mr. Boston Mass, one of the massive bodybuilders of all, well, to me, for the 212, Jose Raymond. And of course, the voice of bodybuilding, Mr. Bob Ciccarello, who is also the voice of the Olympia and the Arnold. It's kind of a big deal. Well, in his head, at least. No, I'm kidding. Kidding, Bob. Thank you guys for being on. Appreciate it. So, Jose, I want to touch base with you on the Olympia. So I was listening to a podcast, and I heard something that you had an incident happen with your car rental at the hotel.
Yeah, I was staying at the MGM Suites, and it was like an Airbnb, and I had a rental car, and it was kind of a pain in the ass. You had to go tip the person that brought it to you, tip the guy that brought it back. I would have rather took Ubers had I known that. But it wasn't a big deal until like our fourth day there. I get in the car, and there's all these drinks that I didn't drink. There was a hat. There was a bag from a dispensary, weed in the car. And I was like, whoa, none of this is mine. I'm like, this ain't my car. So I told the valet, and they were like, yeah, they looked at the VIN or whatever. There was a ticket in the window. They're like, yeah, that's yours. I'm like, and someone else was driving it. And they're like, no, that's impossible. And I'm like, all right, listen, I don't have time to deal with this, but let's try to figure this out. Because maybe two people had the exact same car.
Right.
Oftentimes car rentals do. And someone's driving my car. So just let me know what's going on. I leave, come back, give them the car. And then the morning that I go to leave and to go to the airport, you're crunched for time. Same thing. I get in the car. There's a car charger plugged in. There's clothes. There's all this shit, more drinks in the drink holders. And I'm pretty anal about my car. I don't leave stuff in there. And I know, I'm like, this isn't my car. And this happened again. And they were like trying to deny it. And I go, buddy, what is going on here? And the guy got in my face and was like, yeah, we make six figures, doing this job, and we're going to joyride your car. And I'm like, someone is. I'm like, and I didn't have time because I had to get to the airport. But I did have like a manager. They took all my information, never did anything about it. Thankfully, I wasn't charged any damage to the vehicle or anything, but I did get screwed because I had to discuss it with them. I didn't have time to go gas it up before I returned it, and they get you for like $8 a gallon on the gas.
God.
So it cost me an extra $75 or something. But it was a nightmare. It was so weird. Luckily, I never left anything in the vehicle. But there was someone joyriding my car every day.
That sounded like a Ferris Bueller thing where the guys take off in the car and put all the miles on it,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
crazy. Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And I'm not smart enough to track the numbers. You wouldn't think you would have to do that, right? You give it to the valet, they put it away and bring it back. No, they were giving it to someone else to take it out. They were like, I don't smoke weed. They were smoking weed in the car. You could tell. It was just disgusting.
Yeah, I heard that story. I rent a lot of cars, so obviously when I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, that's one of my nightmares too, like that happens. But anyway, I just wanted to touch on that because I thought that was like just the worst. I can't imagine how angry he was during that time. But Mr. Ciccarello, I see you started again your voice of bodybuilding being very successful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So what I want to talk about with you guys is the 212. There's been a lot of talk, obviously people want to get rid of the 212 because people like, Derek Lunsford, Hadi Choopan, our current Mr. Olympia, Sean Clarita's come in. And so people think, well, why even have 212 now? So Bob, you actually started the 212 division, right?
Partially correct. Yeah, it actually wasn't the 212 when I submitted it for the Pro League. It was actually the 210, which then got changed to the 202, and then finally found a home at 212. So yes and no.
Okay. Now, Jose, I got to ask you something. So you actually you got your pro card 4 times.
Yeah.
And 4 times, and then when the what is it, the 210 class came out, then that's when you decided, okay, I'm gonna accept my pro card.
Yep. Yep. I turned pro, and if Bob, by today's rules, I would have had 8 pro cards.
No, listen, I mean, you and I go way back, bro, but Isabel, I don't know if you're aware, but Jose actually has the distinction of being the most decorated NPC athlete of all time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
A record that will never, he's like the Cal Ripken of bodybuilding.
Well,
if you don't know that, he was a baseball player for the Orioles and competed in, baseball for the most consecutive games at 2000 and something, like years he never missed a game.
Yeah.
So, under today's rules, Jose, you would have been a pro back in the 90s. I mean,
yeah. So I had the distinction of being in the overall with a lot of great bodybuilders, but Bob was the first in the 2000 right. USA's 23 years ago.
Wow.
Imagine that.
Ain't that something?
That's crazy. I can't believe it went by that fast.
That's a long time. So you actually was, I read something too, you're natural even during that time when you won your pro card and everything?
Oh, yeah. I didn't start until after my first pro show. I did the New York Pro in 2009, and why change what's working? I won every show natural up until that point, but then I went against some heavy hitters. My debut had David Henry, Kevin English, Eduardo Correa, Mark Dugdale, Fakri. I mean, I placed 8th, and I'm like, whoa, that never happened before. And that was in the 202 division, and I was about 184.
Wow.
Which was still good, the biggest I had been up to that point. But I knew I had to make a decision. I'm like, this is where I'm going to be in 8th place, or play by the rules. So I immediately after that show, I started, and 3 months later, I was 202 on stage at the Atlantic City Pro. Bob, you were there too, I think.
Probably, yeah.
In Atlantic City, and I was second to Flex Lewis, and it was a very tight, hotly contested second. And then a few weeks later, we went to the Olympia, and I was first call out at the Olympia, and I placed 6th behind Flex Lewis, who was 5th. And and that just set me to a different trajectory. I always knew that if I could do that well, naturally, that I could do very well. Followed the same trajectory as Sean Roden, is Kai, Ronnie Coleman. A lot of those guys were natural for a long time before the metamorphosis. Kai was like 225, still natural, and then you saw the 277-pound version of Kai.
Right. So let me interject on this one, Isabel. So you mentioned at the top of the show that there's some people calling for the demise of the 212.
Yes.
Let me just clarify that. Those aren't people. Those are idiots. Okay, let's just get that clear. Only an idiot would want to get rid of a division that's been so successful. And just to provide some history for people, Jose was one of the people who was the impetus for me to actually suggest and bring to the Pro League the 212. And that was because Jose, again, who won every show that there was to win numerous times, literally could have turned pro, but turned it down. And his rationale, and he can tell you in his own words, was back then was, what's the point? I'm going to turn pro and get my head kicked in. At least I can be the top amateur in the sport. Right. And he was for many years. That gave me, and again, he was one of my inspirations to say, you know what? We actually need another division here for people like Jose that aren't 230 pound, 40 pound, now 300 pound mass monsters. And Pro League was all ears. Again, we put it together, we put it out there, and it's enjoyed a lot of success. But this gave the idea, or not the idea, that this gave the chance for the Jose's and the Flex Lewis's and the David Henrys and everybody else that we can bring into the discussion, an opportunity to turn professional, compete on an even and level playing field against people that were within 10 pounds, not 50 pounds or 70 pounds, and has literally given careers to people like Jose, like Guy Cisternino, like Flex Lewis. Ask these guys if they want to get rid of the this competition. Listen, we provide a platform that people can literally go from one division. If they outgrow a division, they can go to another. And those names that you mentioned are which are very prevalent, the Hottie Chupans, right? The Derek Lunsfords, these type of guys. God bless them.
Bonac.
Right, Bonac, right? I mean, these are guys that were able to transition. And if you're that good, God bless you, go to that. But why would we want to get rid of it for the other 99% of the guys who are in that division and have done very well, and again, has provided contracts, guest posings, starting businesses, representing supplement companies. I'm sure Flex Lewis would have done very well in the open, but I don't know. It's a little more impressive when you're a 7-time Olympia champion on your resume than, took top 5 in a couple of shows and made a few bucks.
What's your thoughts, Jose?
I couldn't agree more. And Bob, I'm glad you said that, because I always like to think that I was played a big role in that division coming, because every year I'd go to nationals or USA's and people look at me in line. What the hell are you doing here? You won your pro card. I'm like, no, I won the ability to turn pro,
right?
But I chose not to. And it wasn't like I stayed in the same weight class. I went from light to welter to middle, and then I could have went up to light, heavy, and heavy. And luckily, I was able to make a pro career out of it. But there's two reasons why. I agree with you, Bob. It's idiots. It's nobody in the IFBB office talking about getting rid of the 212. There's too much money. I mean, because you would lose every single guy, bantamweight, middle, lightweight, welterweight. Why would they pay $250 for a pro card if they're not going to compete, if there's nothing to compete? And that's what I was saying. When I first won my pro card, it was the Jay and Ronnie show. And they were both well over 100 pounds bigger than me. And I'm like, that's silly. I mean, and back then, everyone was huge. Dennis James, yourself, Bob, everyone was 250, 260. 270. It was crazy. So I had no ambition. And then once that 210 started, that division, and I saw who was coming out, and it got exciting, and there was a lot of buzz. And like Bob said, it made a career for me. I never would have been pro. I would have just kept training people like I have all along. And I probably would have stopped competing a long time ago. And as far as, I did do a few pro open shows, and I did well. I placed second in one and fourth in another. But that took me until I was 41 years old. That's when I reached my peak at 41. And I likely wouldn't have continued bodybuilding if I didn't have an outlet to do so. So, yeah, no, I had some great contracts through the years. I was sponsored by 6 different companies, a magazine contract. I had a lot of offers and guest appearances, guest posings. And it allowed me to make a living and buy this house and do everything that allows me to do what I do today. And it just wouldn't have happened.
And you're an Arnold Classic champion too. So, I mean, a lot of things. Yeah.
That's one thing. I really hope someone figures a way to bring that back to the Arnold Classic.
Well, that's going to be next question.
Prestigious event.
Yeah.
That's a huge feather. I did every year. Their reasoning, I guess, was that, the big names didn't want to do it. And I'm like, I did it all 5. I thought I was a pretty big name.
Well, let me just interject on that, Jose, because I have a little bit of knowledge on that subject. So the last regime that was there, before the current people that are running the Arnold, fell behind the times a little bit in terms of, putting a purse out there that was, online with what kind of a show it is, right? See Arnold. I mean, it's supposed to be a big prestigious show. And the prize money was only $5,000 back then. And I had conversation with the promoters back then and told them, like, look, you're having a different, they were pissed off because they weren't getting all these big names. They weren't getting a lot of guys that were coming out, thinking that the prestige of the show itself should have been enough. And my argument was look, these are professionals, okay? $5,000. So the guy who wins the show is going to lose money. It costs more than that to prepare. I mean, come on, let's get real here, right? And they didn't quite see it the same as I did. And ultimately they just said, well, if we don't have the support, we're not going to have the show. But it was literally their own fault because listen, make it something that's decent, okay? That's something that's not a joke. Listen, there's $10,000 purses I'm still fighting to get rid of because ultimately you can win a $10,000 show and not win a dime. I mean, again, it's costing you more than $10,000, as Jose is obviously shaking his head in agreement. If you're at the pro level, okay, and this doesn't mean, well, these guys run all this gear and this and that. Listen, just food. Your biggest cost for a show, everybody, is food. It's not gear. Yeah. It's not anything else. So a lot of the guys have contracts and they get compensated, or Pro-Tan takes care of them, or CJ makes your trunks. So those are ancillary costs that don't add up to a whole lot. But
people always ask how I got here. I was willing to work just a little harder than everyone else, every damn day. If I can have hundreds of hours back, I'm gonna grab them. Spending hours prepping chicken, rice, and vegetables, F that. I rely on perfect nutrition. I rely on trifecta.
In order to get ready for a pro show, and I detailed this out years ago, these purses, we all have to look and find solutions to get these purses up to a minimum of $20,000 to $25,000 to make it even worth it for some of these guys to go out. And these are open shows, not just 212 shows. So, but that's why it kind of disappeared. Now you got new people running it. Hopefully they're receptive to bringing some of these divisions back, be it the 212 or some of the other ones that have kind of disappeared. But, there's always a lot of moving parts to these things. People think it's easy, or it's, why doesn't the Pro League do something? The Pro League is a entity. It's a sanctioning body. Promoters put on shows. That's who you got to get to. And then you've got to now go down that trail, that rabbit hole of, okay, well, we need sponsorship. Well, who's coming up with the money? Is it ticket sales? Is it pay-per-view? Is it all these things kind of get rolled into why things are the way they are. But those are the things we need to work collectively for, to keep the sport moving up.
So, Jose, the other thing that has been come up is a lot of the 212 shows have dropped down. So that's another reason why people think, okay, we just need to get rid of the 212. So I want to ask you something. So back in the day, like 1974, I guess they used to have a lightweight class. Do you think that's something they should bring back instead of having the 212?
What would the difference be? Bring it to 200 and under, or 200 and over?
So what she's saying is, in the old days, like at the Olympia, they would have like the short class and a tall class, or then it was a lightweight and a heavyweight winner of like the Olympia. So basically you would be relegated to a class instead of a division.
I still don't know the difference.
Well, there is a difference, because as a class winner, you don't really win any title, right? You just won your class.
Yeah.
As a division, and I've had to point this out to people, that the 212 is not the lightweight Mr. Olympia. It's its whole thing on its own. You are the 212 Olympia champion, Mr. 212 Olympia, again, whatever you want to call it, right? That has a very good distinction to it. You're not just the class winner, and then you go on to lose in the overall, and it's like, well, okay, I won my class, I don't get a dime for it, I'm a class winner. You know what I mean? I think that's the main distinction, Jose, and what's the difference between it's just being a class versus it's a whole division right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I think it should stay the way it is. I think it should be the 212 Olympia. And if there were any change, I personally would change the weight back to 202. Just because, one, I know if they kept it there, I would have won a bunch of them.
Yeah, you would.
I know, because I was my best at 202. the minute they said you got to put on 10 pounds, which I did, my physique was not as good as it was at a lighter weight. I managed to do well, but I would have preferred staying at 202 and having Flex have to suck down at 202.
Right.
He's 3 inches taller than me. Who can carry 202 better, me or him?
Listen, you might have been a 7-time Olympia champ, because I don't think Flex could have done it. He was sucking it down to 212. So you talk about how it goes two different paths, Jose, and it could have been, you could have been that guy with 7 Olympias.
Well, here's the ironic thing. The year they changed it from 202 to 212 was 2012, which was Flex's first year winning. The last time I beat Flex was 2011.
There it is.
So that was, or the only time I beat Flex, I should say. So, for me, I wish they kept it to 202, but no, I want to see the 212. I just think there's a bit of a lull now, because here's what happened with the 202. All those names that I named off, Eduardo, Flex, myself, David Henry, Kevin English, they were all guys that everybody already knew. Right. I built a reputation 10 years prior to that by winning shows, and had magazine photo shoots, and back then when there were magazines, everyone knew who everyone was, because we'd wait chomping at the bit to see that magazine, and then we all knew who everyone was. So these people were created like stars. So the whole division was chock full of stars, and now there's guys coming out that we really don't know, and then they, like Hadi just popped up out of nowhere, and I'd run into him in Korea. I'm like, holy cow. And I knew something special was happening. And then, Derek, Hadi, and Sean Clarita are not reasons to get rid of it. That's 3 out of 1,000,
Right.
The rest of them need a place to compete and deserve a place to compete.
And Jose, to emphasize your point, it is a lull in the action right now, because most of the divisions, including up to the heavyweight, are eligible for the 212. Right? 198.25 is the cutoff for light heavyweights, correct?
Yeah.
So some of the heavyweights even are in the 212 range that they could compete. It really just excludes super heavyweights. So almost all of your classes at the national level, the USA level, can literally compete in the 212. So that tells you a lot right now. It also tells you that despite the amount of pro cards that we give out, which is hundreds these days. I mean, it's not like the old days. You had to win the overall. In the old days, you had to not only win the overall, the USA, then you had to go on and win the world championship. So it was even more difficult and exclusive to get that pro card. But we don't have classes that complement how many pro cards we give out. Meaning, for the amount of pro cards we give out, you would think we would go to pro shows, and there would be 60 or 70 competitors in a class, because we are literally giving out hundreds of pro cards every year, right? Mm-hmm. So it begs the question, where are these people? Where are they? Most people, statistically, that turn pro never compete as a pro. And these are the things I think we need to take a look at as a federation, as it would be, because the numbers don't jive. We still have, if you got 40 people in a class, that's still considered a big class these days.
Huge.
Right? But we had that 15, 20 years ago, Jose, right? Back in the Night of the Champions days. I mean, I competed against 48 guys or whatever it was. It was something crazy. This is back in early 2000. So the question is, if we're giving out hundreds more pro cards, why don't we have hundreds more competitors competing? And I think these are some of the logistics and the things that we have to look at as an entity, as a federation, and figure out, okay, what's the next 5 years looking like? Why do most people that turn pro never compete as a pro? And so on and so forth. And these are some of the things that we deal with at a federation level. Maybe everybody wants to ask the golden question. What do you do as the athlete's rep? This guy doesn't do anything. These are the things that we work on, that I work on, to try to figure out where are we going over the next 10 years.
Well, Bob, I'll tell you, there's something I would like to see happen with, let's just say, I think one of the years we had 1,200 pros, people who turned pro. So out of those people, can we say maybe, 10% actually competed? I think there should be a rule. Give you guys maybe 1 year or 2 years. You have to compete in a pro show If not, you don't have a pro card, right?
You know what? I don't disagree with that. I mean, that's something I've, pondered with myself over the years. Is what's the point? If the point of getting a pro card is to further your agenda and your career as a personal trainer, because you got that IFBB Pro next to your name. I mean, listen, it's earned to whatever degree, whether we agree or disagree with second place pro card, masters pro cards, top three, whatever. It's kind of irrelevant. That's the way it is right now. But I'm with you on that. If you're not competing as a pro, either go back to the amateurs until you're ready, or just, you don't get to use the title. I mean, listen, I'm a title guy. I have a real problem with people using titles that aren't theirs, that they didn't earn. Jose knows this. I'm a stickler when you got guys out there. I don't care whether you're, the 212 Olympia, you're not Mr. Olympia. The men's physique guy, okay, is not Mr. Olympia. The classic guy, Chris Bumstead, is not Mr. Olympia. This is not a title you get to use, much like in the women's, and it's done less often, but you're the bikini champ. You're not Miss Olympia. Andrea Shaw right now is Miss Olympia. That's in bodybuilding. That's been established since 1980. So, again, I know I'm a little old school when it comes to that type of thing, but, listen, there's people like Jose and people like myself who, listen, I mean, it took us, probably an equal amount of time to get a pro card for two different, very different reasons, but I take a lot of pride in that title. And I know Jose takes a lot of pride in all his titles.
Didn't we talk about that? We both took 16 years to turn pro.
Right, yeah.
That's funny.
Well, 13. You might actually have me more on it. Yeah, but the difference is you were winning shows every year.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I'm going to say something that's not going to be popular in the IFBB office, but I think a lot of the reason these guys aren't competing is because they're not good. They're giving out too many pro cards.
Yeah.
So a second place should not get a pro card in my mind. Because what's happening when we were competing in the early 2000s, you would know everyone who was going to be top five way ahead of time. You would know it because those names had been doing it year after year after year. And one guy would be fifth, the next year he'd be third, next year he'd be second, next year he'd be fourth. And we would know that whole crew of every division. I knew every name. I was a student of the sport, followed it crazy. And now I couldn't tell you two guys that are competing. And I follow it more today than I did back then. But because every year, two guys in each division are gone. They don't have time to build their name, build their physique, build, their whole brand. So that's why when people are turning pro, nobody knows who they are, unless they're, Carlos Thomas. That's one guy I know that turned pro,
He hasn't even competed yet.
Right.
Oh, we were just talking about that.
Do it.
How many years has that been? 2 years now for Carlos?
Yeah.
Something like that?
He's doing the New York Pro.
Yeah.
But it was 2 years ago that he turned pro.
Yeah.
But you know what? Short of personal reasons. Again, I know Carlos a little bit. I know his father. They're very good people. I don't know his personal situation. But to Jose's point, you shouldn't be able to get a pro card and then have to work for 2 years to get to a level where you think you're competitive to compete as a pro. That means you needed to stay in the oven a little bit longer.
Right.
And back then when guys were again, it was not uncommon to take 5, 6, 7 years to get a pro card because it was so deep and so tough. And these were good bodybuilders. We always talk about that famous, the 1991 Nationals I was in Pittsburgh is the toughest lineup of all time. And when you go down that list, it's a who's who. Just in my class. I mean, not even to mention the other classes. And there was no super heavyweight back then, okay? So that was the end of the road. So on that show where Kevin Levrone ends up winning and gets the pro card, well, the second place guy named Flex Wheeler had to go to another show. And the third place guy named Paul DeMeo had to go to another show, right? And the fourth place guy, I think you probably heard of him, Jose, his name was Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah.
He had to go to another show. And the fifth place guy was Mendenhall. And the sixth place guy was me. The seventh place guy was a guy named Chris Cormier. He turned into a real deal, right? The eighth place guy was Edgar Fletcher. Dean Caputo. I mean, I could just keep – this was one class. But all of us
Incredible.
had to go. One guy was going to go to the nationals and get his one guy again because you had to win. You still had to win your class there. So that was one guy. That means there were still 5 of us, 6 of us that had to go to next year, and so on and so on and so on. So this will be as popular as what you just said, Jose, and most people will. That out there thinking I agree with everything the Pro League does, and I work for the Federation and all that kind of garbage that we hear. Listen, I'm not in favor. I'm on record for years saying that I don't like second place pro cards. I don't think you should lose and get rewarded with a pro card. I think you need to win something, right? I'm not in favor of Masters pro cards. I think if you get a Masters pro card, that's what it should be, a Masters pro card, not an open one. All right. I'm not in favor of top 3. I know we did that years ago to stock some of the newer divisions and things like that. But no, I'm not in favor. And I'm the last guy that would ever be in favor of these things because of my personal situation. Listen, if it gave it to runner-ups, Jose, this is an interesting one. I would have turned pro in 1989. So
Who are you second to that?
Johnny Morant, the USA's.
Wow.
Right?
Imagine
So
that.
and then he lost to Eddie Robinson, who went on for a decent career, right? And then he had to go get a pro card at the North Americans. So different time and place, but yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm actually not in favor, and I think some of that is manifesting itself now because we have depleted the ranks a little bit too much. And I get all aspects. Listen, I get the business part of it. I'm on all sides. I'm a promoter. I've done this. I've done that. I get it. Jose gets it. But it still doesn't solve the problem right now of how are we giving out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pro cards. I don't know what that number is this year, but it's hundreds. And, you're still trying to fill the ranks of a show. We're still trying to get 10 guys in the Arnold. Doesn't make any sense.
Jose, over the last 2 years, have you seen the numbers go down in the 212 division?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
Why do you think that is?
well, part of the reason is due to the COVID nonsense. There weren't many shows. There weren't the ability to put on a show. And there was so much uncertainty and people like, I'm not prepping for a show that isn't going to happen. So you had a lot of fall off, a lot of drop off, a lot of uncertainty. I'll tell you, this Arnold was the most exciting show that I've been to in a long time because that expo was jam packed. It was loud again. The classic prejudging was awesome. It was exciting again. Even better than the Arnold as far as appearance. The people showing up, the fans. Wait, did I say better than the Arnold or better than the Olympia?
You said better than the Arnold.
Yeah, the Arnold was better than the Olympia to me. But yeah, I think that's part of it. And as Bob said, some of the promoters aren't putting on shows. I don't know. I think that the pandemic had a lot to do with it. I think once things get rolling again, I also see this thing where guys are competing once a year. And I don't get that, and I never did. How do you get better at something by not doing it? You have one shot that one day a year. How do you practice at getting better at that if you don't do it? So that's part of the problem. If some of these guys did more and more shows, they would build their brand, they would build their name, they would get better. And that's kind of what we're missing. Just seeing people pop up once a year, and then every show is filled with, the rest of the guys.
Well, what can be done to grab their interest, though, to make them compete more, you think? More prize money?
Yes, for sure. It doesn't have to be crazy, but I mean, how many years are we in now? It's been 14 years with the 212 division, or the lighter weight division, and there's still what, 3,000 to 5,000.
Wow.
The majority of my time competing, it was 3,000 for first place, 2,000 for second, and 1,000 for third. That's it. Luckily Arnold came in and gave us some money, and I had some contracts where I would get bonus money So I was able to clean up for a couple of years. But for the majority of the shows, they were very low money. And, I personally wanted to put one on in Boston and do it even in conjunction with like Jay Cutler's amateur show and just promote a 212 division at the night show and with a bikini. I could do that, but it's expensive,
Right.
very expensive.
I
And then
know-
I'd be fronting it and splitting it with Jay and Steve. So I'm like, all right.
I know you guys had the
Maybe I'll
Boston
reconsider.
Pro, but do you have any other pro shows in Boston? No.
That was the only one ever.
No.
And it was very entertaining. It was very well done. The lighting was awesome, greatly attended, but the money didn't make sense. There was a little. It just didn't work out for everyone involved. So it's not happening again, to my knowledge.
Right. Well, the other thing that came up too that somebody had said, I'm not going to say their name, but they said if we get rid of the 212, we can actually throw that money into the open prize money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
Sure.
What money? What money are you throwing into the open? Because I don't listen. There's shows that just haven't opened. I don't see any purses of $75,000 because they don't have the other ones. Listen, a promoter is in business to make money. They're trying to figure out how to make money on a competition. And the problem is listen, you can have every division in the book, but it's costing you a lot of money in sanction fee and prize money. And, and people look at this and they don't really add up, they don't know the back end business of how it works. But it's like Jose said, it's a lot of money to put on a pro show. If Jose wants to put on the Boston 212 Pro, right? The Jose Raymond Classic, right? Okay, the Boston Mass. Right? We'll call it whatever.
Yeah.
And first is a sanction fee. Okay, so obviously you want them to the flag of the IFBB, right? There's a sanction fee involved. Okay, so that's number one. Now you got to get a scheduled date. Now you got to have prize money. Well, Jose's just starting out. So let's just say he goes, look, guys, I'd love to put a big purse, but it's literally my first year. So I'm going to go 3, 2, 1. Okay, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, 3, 4, 5. That's $6,000 that you now got in the kitty along with your sanction fee. Now you got to have pro judges. Well, you got a pro competition. You got to have pro judges. Now I got to fly in or whatever, or use. I don't know if they're in the area, right? 5 to 7 pro judges. They got to get paid, And listen, we're just touching that stuff. We haven't touched a venue, paying for this, paying for that, trophies, awards. You can just keep going. Yeah, I need a staff.
Guaranteeing hotel rooms.
I need hotel rooms, right? I got to secure. I hope somebody's got to MC this show, right? I can give you a few names to MC your show, Jose. So, you got that guy, right? You got anybody you can possibly think of that you got to come up with that you got to pay. This is not a cheap venture. Jose, in the Boston Mass Classic, you're looking at 25 grand bare min.
That's without promoting the show.
No,
You got to spend a year promoting it.
Correct. So, not to go back too far in this conversation, but what Jose said earlier, again, listen, the idea behind the 212 and all that stuff was to create opportunity for the athletes. Jose wasn't competing for $3,000. You don't need the $3,000, right? I mean, listen, $3,000 wasn't going to beat the world. Maybe he'll pay his mortgage and his car payment the next month, but that's not the reason he did it. He did it to A, compete in a craft that he's dedicated his life to. B, winners companies like he said, he was able to sign contracts, represent companies, get guest posing. That's where the real money was made. In the old days, there was publication contracts, and there was, what's changed a lot over the past 10 years is because of social media. It's video killed the radio star. Right. A lot of these companies don't need a pro anymore. When was the last time you saw a guest poser at a show, right? Every show used to have a guest. That was a big feature way back in our day, right, Jose?
Yeah,
now,
it was awesome.
Good luck. Maybe the guy's there as courtesy of his company, but nobody's shelling out. Listen, the Jose Raymond Classic, you know what? I'm going to have this guy come in and guest pose. Well, how much is he? Well, he wants $7,000. Plus, I got to get him on a first class flight, pay him some food, bring in his wife, that's another $10,000. for a guest poser who's going to be out of shape on stage for 2 minutes. So
That's a lot of cheddar. So here's something else that was brought up too. So changing the 212 to the 220 division, since we're having a lot of 300-pound guys now in the open.
Most of your winners nowadays are barely 220 in the open.
correct. Yeah.
You diet down, train hard, and supplement smart for months. When the time comes to step on stage, don't leave your tan to chance. Go with the pros. Pro Tan. #1 worldwide since 1987 and the official sponsor of the Olympia for the last 15 years. Don't step on stage without it. Pro Tan.
So I don't believe all these weights. I don't. Saying that Derek was 235 and Hottie's 240 and no way. I don't believe it. I think they're closer to 220 anyway.
Do we need to have a scale on stage, Bob, to weigh them?
Well, I thought, isn't there a scale round? I mean, we keep hearing about, everybody's so concerned with how much they weigh, but I'm still looking for the scale round. I think it's next to the bench press round, isn't it? Don't we have that round in there now?
Yeah, right.
What do you bench?
Yeah.
I don't bench as much as you guys. So, Jose, are you going to be making a comeback anytime soon? Are you done? Masters Olympia?
I'm done.
Are you?
Done. Yeah, I already had a hip replacement. I got to have a shoulder replacement. I'm enjoying the life I'm living now. I did my time, and
Right.
now I can help the next generation. I do a lot of prepping, coaching. I train people all day, every day. So there's a good living to be made out there, helping the younger people, and a lot of access to them. People from all over the world are going to watch this. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing podcasts every day. I'm a guest on just about every podcast at one time or another. So I have quite the reach, and things are great. If I wasn't, I'll tell you what, I love bodybuilding so much that if I wasn't in pain every day, I might even consider it, because I love to train. But that ship has sailed. I just turned 48. Oh, wow. I want to, I'm just over 200 pounds now. I used to walk around at 250 off season for years. That's not a good idea for someone 5'3", I want to last. I waited till I was 34 to take anything, which helped me, I think, in the long run. And now that I'm 48, I don't need to be doing that at all.
Bob, how many times do you think Jose would have won a 212 Olympia title?
If there was no Flex Lewis?
I mean, as he said, listen, he was there. I mean, Jose was literally one of the guys. I mean, probably the guy, I should say, not just because you're here, Jose, but you were literally the impetus for my idea to put together, again, we call it a 212 now, but, a 210 division at that time. How can a guy that's that good, the most decorated athlete in NPC history, this guy's a multi-time winner. He's won the universe 100 times. He won this show another 5 times. He defended his title over and over and over. But the answer always was the same. Jose, why don't you get that pro card, man? Get my pro card and do what? What am I, get my pro card and get my head kicked in? So why? Why would I do that? Even then, Jose was smart enough to go, you know what? I got 2 choices. I can continue to be the best amateur in the world, right? Which listen, had credibility, right? Nobody was beating him. He was defending his title over and over. It led to opportunities even in that range. Didn't have to be a pro to make money. Or I could stop, take a pro card, and I'll be dead last in an open show because I can't compete fairly with a guy who's 100 and something pounds heavier than me. And now my career's over. So I think you did the smart thing, Jose, going back. How many times could you have been an Olympia champ? Well, listen, I mean, Jose gave it a great shot and competed against some of the best. And still, even with the like he said, the 212 limit, he was on the lesser end of the weights. And you still had a guy outweighing you by a little bit at that level. Listen, 10 pounds is 10 pounds, and Flex Lewis was exceptional, right? Yeah. Clearly, this is a guy who was the exception to the rule. We can't put him in the same category. could Flex have gone to the Open? Possibly. He might have done very well. I don't know. I mean, again, these are all speculative type questions, but Jose was a top contender, and one moment I'll share with you guys, and Jose will remember this very fondly. But his last show at the Olympia, that was a weird year where they were cutting time, and they didn't want us to do a lot of things, and there was no provision for and Jose came and he said, "Look, this is my last show, bro." And I said, "Look, I'm going to get you out right. I'm going to make sure that these people understand all that." And I literally have to go off the script because they didn't want to stop or wait or pause to recognize Jose. And I don't say this is no pat on my own back. Listen, you got a guy who's a veteran competitor, who's been on multi-Olympia stages and all that stuff. You got to give some respect and some just due. And that was a special moment, Jose, where all those people got on their feet and were able to acknowledge your career on the Olympia stage. To me, that's a very special moment at the Olympia.
It was the greatest moment of my entire career. I got to stand there. You gave me the mic. Thank Steve. Thank Jim. Thank everyone. And they sent me off right. I mean, the place was jam-packed.
Yeah.
11,000 fans. Everyone stood. And I saw a video. Someone had a video of it. It was amazing.
Jose, I want to tell you something real quick. I've always had a huge respect for you, long time. I mean, because I've read your, upbringing and everything like that, and from where you came from to where you are now and what you've accomplished, that's amazing. So I wanted to tell you that personally. I mean, I'm not trying to go off the topic here, but
no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a lot of trials and tribulations, mistakes. But hard work and discipline conquers all. Mm-hmm. So, I've always been a positive person. I believe, and I work hard to just keep moving forward. That's all. We're all going to have setbacks. And, the hardest setbacks for me are injuries because it's something I can't control. I can't fix it tomorrow. So the pain that I have in my shoulders, I don't know if you experience this, Bob, but I can't even bench more than 135 now without the grinding of the bone on bone. It is so mentally debilitating. It makes me not want to train. I'm like,
I actually figured out how to fix that, bro.
Yeah?
Yeah. Don't bench press.
Yeah.
Don't bench. Get rid of it. Okay. You just I know you're old school, but I've been preaching against that damn exercise. It's the worst exercise in the world, but I feel your pain, bro. Listen, everything doesn't quite move. I got the similar problem with my knees. They creak and they make a lot of noise and they don't really want to cooperate sometimes. And unfortunately, this is some of the price we pay as bodybuilders, right? As, competitive bodybuilders, whether you're at the elite level or not. When you've been training since you were a kid, and now you start adding it up. I mean, somebody just asked the other day, I ran into some guy, had some guys delivering something. He's like, "Man, you all swole there, dog," the whole thing. And I'm like, "Yeah, I just try to keep in shape now." But he's, and he asked, "How long have you been training?" And I actually had to think about it for a second, right? And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute here.
45 years?
It's 45 years.
Yeah.
It's close to 45 years. I've been training twice as long as this kid's been alive, and it's like, damn, like, hey, two things, one, that's a long time to be pumping iron. Two, I'm old.
Yeah.
Jose,
I started 40 years ago. I'm the youngest of 8. So when my older brothers started, I started with them. Doing pull-ups, push-ups, bench presses, push-downs, pull-downs. I didn't even know what the hell I was doing.
Slightly different, Jose, but I got to get your opinion while I got you here. So Sean Clarita, the giant killer, modern giant killer, has had a tremendous career so far, right? 212 Olympia champ twice over now. Won a pro show, an open pro show last year, which was very impressive given his 180 pounds on stage and such. But I think actually him placing 5th at the Arnold is not only to be celebrated in terms of he held his own against some pretty big boys out there, but I actually think it's more of a testament of why he should stay actually in the 212, not go to the open, because listen, while he did very good and it was very impressive, I don't know. I mean, I would rather be the 212 champ in any show than 5th place in an open. I mean, that's just me, but I want to get your take on that.
Well, Yes, 100%. Because he was fifth in a show that didn't have the top two guys there. You know,
And top
puts
three if
him
we added Brandon Curry.
right. So that puts him at a minimum of eighth, and I don't know what eighth gets paid, but I know his
much.
pay at the Olympia is likely better. Yeah, I think Sean should focus on the 212 because one, the division needs it. They need their superstars, and he's definitely a superstar.
Yep.
And two, he's just not gonna get the look. I always say it by himself, he is the best in the world. Like he's his condition, his proportion, he's freaky looking. But when you put him next to someone, you just see the width and the size does play a role. So I think without question, he should, if he wants to jump into a pro show, but his main focus should be maintaining that Olympia crown and going for number 3, without a doubt. And let's not kid ourselves. There's some guys out there that can push him. If Keon Pearson comes in 100%, if he comes in as hard as Sean, he should beat Sean theoretically.
And Breon, we hear his name getting tossed in there now as a possibility. He could be chasing history, which might be a real pretty good incentive because nobody has in the history of bodybuilding so far has ever won 2 divisions at the Olympia level.
Right. That would be incredible. And he's what, 42? Sean's 40. Sean will be 41 at the Olympia, which I'll reiterate was the best year of my life. So Sean could peak at 41 or even higher.
Do you think that if Nick Walker, Andrew Jack was off, that Sean would have, or Rami, that he would have placed a lot higher than he did? Because a lot of people, like Flex Wheeler, had him winning the Arnold, Sean Clarita.
I did too, before the show, before I saw it.
I'm just gonna say.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was any scenario where Sean was going to win. He may have leapfrogged Andrew if Andrew was way off, or Rami. Rami, here's the thing: I think Rami came back extraordinary on Saturday night compared to Friday night, and that made a big difference. Like if I think if Rami showed up like he did at the Olympia, Sean would have beat him. I honestly, I think that's a possibility. But I was very happy, very pleased for Rami to see that he made those changes. Yet not 100%, but he was significantly better than he was at the Olympia. And I think if he continues on that trajectory, has the right mindset of not having these 50-inch quads and just being so big, I think he can come back. A lot of people are saying that they think he's done. I don't think he's done. I think he just needs to do it the right way. I don't know who's advising him, obviously Chad, but I don't know if that's the right, if Chad is taking the right approach, or if that's just Rami's body, or if Rami's not listening to Chad. I don't know. I don't know any of that. But a smaller Rami would be a little better, or trimmed down a little bit.
Well, some people said his age, because he's getting older, that he's pretty much, I mean, look, we've had older Mr. Olympias, so anything's possible.
Yeah, the 300-pound older Mr. Olympias, it's a lot harder to hang on.
Yeah.
Dexter was a very svelte Mr.
True.
Olympia over 40.
Old bodybuilders are like old dogs. They don't last. They're impressive when they're young, but they don't live a long time in terms of their length of, a small little poodle lasts, for 20 years, right? But Jose is right. Listen, the smaller guys age much more gracefully when it comes to bodybuilding terminology. And the bigger guys age like they're in dog years. You know what I mean? Next thing you know, you're beat up and you can only hang on with 300 pounds for so long. I mean, it's very difficult.
So my last question I'm going to ask you, Jose, is this, because I ask Bob this all the time. So I want to ask your take. What do you define as a freak? In bodybuilding.
Many different types of freak. There's conditioning freaks, shape freaks, aesthetic freaks, muscular freaks. Most of the top 5 at the Olympia are freaks in their own right. You know, Sydney Gillian is a freak. Her waist is smaller than my arm.
Yeah.
You know, was the girl who was the classic women's physique champ before?
Natalia Callejo or
No,
Sarah Villegas?
What's her name?
No, you're thinking of Shanique Graham.
Shanique.
Yeah,
Shanique
she was a superhero.
freak.
Yeah.
You know, they just don't look like everyone else. You know, Phil was a freak. The way his muscle looked, he was a freak in a different way than Kai was a freak. You know, Phil's muscle fibers and skin texture was so unlike everyone else's, and Kai's size for his height was unlike anyone else. And Rami's in that category of like just so massively big, freaky. And then you look at Derek Lunsford. I mean, when have we seen the shoulder lat width down to that vacuum waist, other than Brian Buchanan? You know, that's what it reminds me of, a bigger version, though. You know, there's all types of freaks.
Okay.
You know,
Fair enough.
Guy, that answers it. Bob agrees with that, I'm sure.
Well, funny you should ask, and thanks for the tip-off, Isabel. But luckily for you, Jose, I actually defined what a freak is on my new VOB that's coming out tonight. So you can actually check that out on YouTube, my friend. But I actually kind of dive into that whole issue of, well, what is a freak? Because we throw that term around in bodybuilding all the time. And I say pretty much what you're saying, which is, well, there's a lot of different definitions of freaks. You know, whether you're a freak, like you're huge, like I say, you have a freaky response to, you know, gear and dieting and everything. Like you say, Phil was a freak at the junior national level when we first saw him, and you're like, man, this guy's going to be Mr. Olympia very shortly. So, yeah, there's all types and all kinds, but it's interesting when we break it down into bodybuilding terminology, because we literally should have our own dictionary. We're the only sport that you can call somebody a freak and somebody goes, oh, thanks, man, appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, I used to get excited when people would call me disgusting.
Oh, yeah, right.
Like,
again,
oh, gross. I'm like,
these are terms of endearment for bodybuilders. Man, he looks awesome, man. You know, like you've actually achieved a certain level where your people admire you and other people think you're disgusting, and you couldn't be happier.
Exactly. That's great.
Guys, thank you so much. Jose, can you please give your girl some love for me? I
will.
I adore her and her little Spanx and her.
She loves you.
Oh man, she's great. Love her. But guys, thank you so much. Again, one of the greatest 212 competitors, the Arnold Classic champion, IFBB Pro top Olympian Jose Raymond of Boston, Mass. Bob Ciccarello, the voice of bodybuilding, IFBB Pro, the voice of the Olympia, the voice of the Arnold. You guys, thank you so much. Fit Rockstar signing off.